Welcome, busy gamers. Today we're going to be talking about Dredge. What's good, what's bad, and that all important question, is it worth your time? If you joined me for another worth your time video in the past, feel free to skip straight to the section you're most interested in, and if not, let us head right into the overview. So Dredge was developed by Black Salt Games, and it was released on all major platforms in March of 2023. In Dredge, you take on the role of a down-on-your-luck fisherman. If you're not sold yet, well, there be treasure in those dark waters for those who are brave enough to dredge it up. Throughout the game, you're going to be balancing fishing for profit with dredging the depths for strange curiosities and pieces of a mystery surrounding the monsters of the archipelago. Also, as a consummate professional, you will constantly be researching how to hone your craft using parts to upgrade your rods, reels, and nets to catch the wider range of underwater denizens. You feel like making money a bit faster? Well, you can do that too. It might come at the expense of your sanity because fishing at night here gets you a better profit for sure, but just what is that boat in the distance doing? And did something strange just slither up into your hull? With 5 main and drastically different islands to explore and over 150 fish to catch, Dredge has a surprising amount of content for a shorter game. As you explore and the story unfolds, you can turn your 6 to 8 hour journey into well over 10 hours if you take on all of the optional pursuits. So at the time of this review, I've completed Dredge's main story and most of its side missions, playing for probably around 12 hours. I've played primarily on PC, but I have tested the console's controls, and both have their benefits. For example, controlling your speed is far easier on a controller, and overall, I enjoyed and preferred the mouse and keyboard, even though there were those downsides. So what's good about Dredge? The core gameplay loop centers around easy and straightforward but satisfying play. It's a fishing game for those of us who aren't really aficionados of the genre, with catching mechanics that center around a variety of timed button pressing minigames and a spatial awareness puzzle to store the highest possible value of fish in your very limited hull space. Now, you'll also be making that trip back and forth to the nearest fishmonger to hawk your wares, and that's why it's important to ensure you get the most out of each packed space. Fishing will take place at set nodes that are indicated by disturbed areas of water and pools of fish that visually represent what you'll drag up should you choose to fish there. In addition, there is a nice variety of fish types that force you to adjust your equipment and methods to catch them, which makes progression and exploration feel pretty rewarding. Progression is worth talking a bit further about here as well, because early on in your career, all you have is an old ship and a pile of debt. But quickly, you're making very noticeable advancements. You'll constantly be upgrading your speed, the storage space in your hull, and the amount of light you can generate to pierce the darkness, and keep yourself feeling safe and sane. So before I dive into talking about the story, let's talk a little bit about that exploration and the sense of scope that's actually conveyed in what is a relatively small world. Each of the 5 islands have their own unique puzzles, their own unique monsters, and theme to them, with plenty of hidden secrets to uncover. On one island, you can befriend a dog, finding it a new home. On others, you can find odd altars to different creatures that reward you with special fishing equipment. Well, as long as your mind doesn't focus on why that particular crab trap has teeth anyway. And throughout the environment, there are going to be a whole host of interesting locals to meet and to delve into their personal stories. If you're brave enough to push your limits, you can even uncover more information about each island's respective monster. Those vibrating stones, they do nothing by day, but with a little sleep deprivation, they're quite chatty. So for a game that's intended to be creepy, it also often succeeds in a calm and a tranquil beauty. The sunset on the waves, the ever-present central lighthouse always guiding you home, and the glowing coral reefs are quite stunning. The design of the characters have a quirky noir look with a lot of charm, And while its story is a slow burn, it's one that is woven well enough to keep you engaged throughout the journey. So what's bad about Dredge? The same simple mechanics that make this accessible, they get out of the way of the story and all of that, but that can cut both ways. It bogs you down as you reach the later hours of the game because simple mechanics can become repetitive and tiring. And while new minigames are introduced, they aren't really different enough in how they play to stand out. In addition, there are very limited hull spaces. Even once you've upgraded them, you're often taking it up with equipment, which means there aren't really long expeditions in Dredge. You'll be making multiple trips back and forth just to sell fish on days that you're trying to earn money. This can be pretty tedious and it can keep you away from the more interesting aspects of the game, especially on later islands when you're traveling more treacherous pathways and often in tight quarters. The game can also be pretty grindy for those that tend towards a completionist mentality. You can easily pack the main story into a 6 to 8 hour span, but if you want to research and upgrade every aspect of your ship, or if you've got to catch them all, for example, with aberrant versions of every fish available, you can spend a lot of time farming and locating specific nodes. Speed controls on controller versus keyboard is also worth calling out here, as it's much easier to control your ship via a controller, as it has a method for adaptive speed control, where via the keyboard your speed is basically on and off switch at the highest level. You don't really need to trigger insanity either, and in all honesty, it's a game built around a Lovecraftian theme. I can say it was quite easy to avoid putting myself into many situations where I had to risk madness. I could happily fish during the day or close to the dock at night, earning my keep and blissfully ignoring the odd mutated fish or interloper that slid into my hull. I think it is a downside that I can avoid insanity, that I can avoid some of those creepy aspects of the game, and that it doesn't really punish me for doing so. Basically, all of my other complaints have recently been patched away. They removed timers on many of the quests that could be missed, and they also added functionality to the map. You can now zoom and scroll at it. You can also add markers for areas of interest that you want to revisit, such as rare fish pools and things of that nature. So let's move on and talk a little bit about the ephemeral efficiencies of this game. There aren't a ton of things to talk about. However, each fishing minigame basically rewards you for success by catching your fish faster. If you're to fail, you actually just spend more in-game time, but you're not actually losing out on anything. The story is very well paced. If you choose to continue to move on with the story, you're always able to do so. And it batches them out in these optional little conversations in which you can talk to the locals. I think this is all done very, very well, and for an entire game that is packed into a 6 to 12 hour span for most people, I think this is hitting the right thing for the channel, or hitting the right note for the channel, so to speak. Let's move on to the final scores. Overall, I'm going to go ahead and give this game a 9. Is it competing with games that I will be playing for the next 10 years? Absolutely not. But it is a fishing game that I strongly recommend. Its story is subtle and is told primarily through bite-sized interactions with locals rather than cutscenes or big events. But its story is definitely one that's unforgettable, and I think it would be unfortunate if you were to miss it. In addition, unlike minigames, it does not overstay its welcome. It knows what it's out to achieve, and it does it by packing a lot into a small package without including any excessive bloat. I actually did knock the ephemeral efficiency score back to an 8 instead of a 9, but this is not because it overstays its welcome. It's because if you want to complete everything in this game, if you want to catch all of the fish, that is going to be a grindy experience, and that's not really efficient for your time. That being said, if you're the kind of person that wants to do that, you don't mind the grind, and it won't be a barrier or an issue for you. Nor is any content really gated or fun really gated behind that grind. All right, that has been my review of Dredge. I really hope you enjoyed this content, and if you liked it or you have any feedback for me, please feel free to give me a comment below. Other than that, have a great time gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.